Fear is the enemy.
Baggy City Music Box.
Whatever it is that you're going for, man, go hard. And hold on, never give up. Gotta have that mentality, man. I put in the work, I spent a lot of time on the waiting list. Never complained, I ain't never said shit. Shoot my shot, no fear if I miss. Imagine you chasing a dream that you love, only to find out it wasn't enough. You fall on your face, but you get right back up. And you fall back again, but you get right back up, yeah. That's the way that it's always been. Don't nobody care about the grind but you. Nobody putting in the time but you. Make up your mind, who you wanna be. I know who I am, know what I want. Live by 2 words, mama mentality. And that's word to my mom, word to my pops, word to my little bro. They said make your mistakes, but don't make excuses on why you can't live and learn. On a couple occasions I damn near went broke. I'm chasing this music thing, and I ran out of hope. I threw in the towel, said fuck the hole in the street. I kept on writing and touring. I picked up a job cause I knew it was important. The money I made, I would stash it away just to fund my recordings. And I didn't wanna stop cause I didn't know how. I would lay in my room by myself late at night and I finally figured it out. I just wanna be the best version of me, make all the music that I wanna make. I don't care what nobody gon' say. You miss all of the shots you don't take. And the answer is no, if you don't ask. If it gets hard, this too shall pass. God is my witness and he got the plan. He got the plan. I put in the work, I spent a lot of time on the waiting list. Never complained, I ain't never said shit. Shoot my shot, no fear if I miss. Imagine you chasing a dream that you love, only to find out it wasn't enough. You fall on your face, but you get right back up. And you fall back again, but you get right back up, yeah. That's the way that it's always been. Don't nobody care about the grind but you. Nobody putting in the time but you. Make up your mind, who you wanna be. I know who I am, know what I want. Live by 2 words, mama mentality. Yeah. Remember, man, you only in competition with yourself. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the process. Pleasure and pain. R.I.P. the greatest. 0824.
Check 1 2, check 1 2. Can you guys see yourselves now? Can you guys see me? Are we here?
I can see you and Carmen.
Yes.
Can you guys see yourselves now? Okay, cool. I can see me. All right, so we are missing Kai at the moment. Oh, there he is. Let's add him back to the conversation. All right, so welcome. Anyone that is watching or is going to watch this in the future, we thank you guys for tuning in to our mental health check for October. We're going to be talking about toxic relationships. This is actually going to be a 2-part series because this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we are going to do a second part in 2 weeks. This is our first part, which we're going to jump in with my guest for today. I'm really excited. I will go ahead and start off with you since you're sitting next to me and you showed up like 5 minutes before I was about to go on. She showed up at the house. So welcome. Tell them who you are and why you're here.
I'm Lainey. And actually, I looked it up just the other day. My name, the definition of my name, Lainey, Laney, is bright light.
Okay. And why are you here?
I'm here to support and uplift and hopefully, share my insight in, the things that I've gone through and how I maintained. Because honestly, we have relationships with everyone,
Mhm.
you know, work relationships, interpersonal relationships, or romantic relationships, right? So it's really about identifying the energy, right, between all of the important key people in your life, you
Hmm.
know, coworkers. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for showing up. Appreciate you.
I'm glad that
You.
equipment got out early.
Yeah, she didn't tell me she was coming. She just showed up
Yep.
here and she said she was ready. So we gonna keep this thing on and popping. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next person. Carmen, tell them a little bit about yourself. Why you here, madam?
My name is Carmen, and I am with Sophisticated and Loud, which is a podcast. And we go throughout the community. Whatever our community needs us to do, that's what we do. And I'm just here to give my experience, strength, and hope, and to listen, but also let people know that you can do whatever it is you choose to do. It starts with you and it ends with you. So,
Absolutely. All right, Allison.
My name's Allison Fine. This is my third time on this podcast. I don't know. Do you consider it a podcast? I guess it is. Um, I'm a social worker by trade, I suppose, and a former teacher. But I'm also a survivor of uh, severe domestic violence. Um, and I think I'm going to be on both episodes, so we'll probably get more into some of that in the second half of the month. Um, but mental health. I have a podcast also called Old Heads, Young Minds, with my partner, my homeboy Robert Pinner. We're also both comedians, but our podcast also has a heavy mental health component to it. Um, and so I really appreciate what David does and his intentionality around his topics. So when he asks me to be on, I agree. So I'm I'm glad to be here. Um, Something that we talked about on my first episode was my my most massive incident, I suppose. But toxic relationships are something I'm very familiar with, both with myself and with people that I love. So this is an important topic to talk about.
All right. Last but not least, my guy Kai.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kai Steplight. It's nice to meet you, Carmen. David Hayes already stated that we go back a long time. Gosh, man, probably got to be over 15 years, I think, at this
Yeah.
point. I'm losing track of the years as I get older.
Right.
and and Allison, nice to meet you. The lady sitting next to David, what was your first name again?
It's Lainey. I know I'm
Lane.
all stuffed up.
Gotcha.
Laney.
It's nice meeting you, Lainey.
Laney. Yeah.
Got it. Nice meeting you, Lainey. Just a little bit of background about myself. So, my ministry has always been, I coach basketball. I coach youth basketball, coach high school kids, high school girls, have got an opportunity to coach at the college level. And so when you're coaching, young men and kids, youth in general, it's not just, it doesn't always just, doesn't always pan out to be just about basketball. There's a lot of kids out there, a lot of families out there that are struggling with some of the same issues that David brings up in his podcast and what we're here to talk about today. And so I've had firsthand experience with dealing with and helping and being a mentor and assisting families and other kids that are dealing with some of these same issues. We also just started a podcast as well with a couple of other brothers that I know. It's called the Fatherhood Check-In. It's just trying to get just young men, young fathers, together to talk about some of the struggles, to be able to provide some advice, an ear to listen, a safe place for fathers to be able to stress some of the things that they're dealing with. We talk about toxicity and toxic relationship, but there's also toxic masculinity as well. And so we try to talk about that and try to break down those barriers with other fathers. And so I'm relatively new to this podcast space, but I'm not new to dealing with and working with youth and working with young men and women to try to help them get through whatever mental barriers or whatever relationship barriers that they're dealing with. So I'm glad to be here. I'm excited to talk about this topic in general, and I appreciate you guys having a safe space for us to do it.
We appreciate your
Yes.
presence.
Can I speak to that real quick to something you
Sure.
just said? I really love that you are acknowledging that there are youth that are experiencing things that us as adults deal with, because I think sometimes we think about some of these issues as adult problems.
Right.
And I think the same way, I don't know what, I used to be a high school teacher, but I haven't been for a long time. So I don't know what the curriculum is these days, but when I started teaching, I always wondered why we didn't teach like resume building and how to write a check. That speaks to my
Right.
age, I suppose. And what it's like to do a job interview, like life skills. I think they do a better job at that. But I think part of that is also, mental health and emotional security and how to deal with these types of things. And I say that because for those of you who don't know, which I'm guessing is 3 out of 4 of you, my biggest TV experience, which I'll talk more about on the other episode. My ex-husband was bipolar and using drugs and alcohol and stabbed me 9 times. And I almost died. And I spent 35 days in Harborview. He was arrested for murder initially because they didn't think I was going to live. But I'm here. And I actually have done some speaking at some different spaces, and there was youth there. And it was incredibly difficult to have these young kids come up to me afterwards and say, like, would you talk to my friend? She's in a relationship. Could I give my friend your information? These are high school girls. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, I think that my friend is with someone that's harming her in high school. And that was kind of a difficult pill to swallow, because I think as a society, we think of these as things that happen when you're an adult. And I think we don't realize how often they start when they are children.
No,
So I really love that you address that. And I wish that they would do more educating around these issues in school, because not only do they happen, but they have even less tools than adults. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this, but how many people don't leave their abusive partners? How many people don't make it out of those relationships because they end up dead, or they stay for so long and
But
they are just
apart
repeatedly
from-
abused. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
teaching them young who to talk to, what the resources are, is so vital. So I love that your organization does that. And I love that you as a coach realize it's not just about basketball. It's about the whole student, the whole person. So that's really dope.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love
And
that too.
one thing that I've noticed is there's less. We're lacking the environment for family friendly spaces, right? I can't take my kids to Safeway without exposing them to, drug addicts or, different behaviors. You can't take them to the playground without having, these things have a long-term effect on our children, because they are impressionable, and they, regardless of whether or not it's in your home, it's still outside of your door. It's in your community. and that's one thing that I would like to see change. All the drug addicts and horrible, toxic people, need to take it indoors again, and make it less acceptable to be doing.
I think for me, I'm on the other side of the coin. I haven't had what you would call a toxic relationship per se.
Hmm.
Everything for me came from my childhood, and my trauma makes me toxic. So I guess from here, being here, it's kind of for me holding myself accountable and accepting and realizing the fact that I uh, through my trauma bring toxicity into the relationships.
Hmm.
Uh, I've been in therapy for over 25 years, and I've learned, the first thing first is to hold yourself accountable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Personal
Um,
accountability.
Yeah.
yeah,
Because I, on my group, I've been identifying that as it's socially acceptable to disassociate, right? And completely put everything else on somebody else or a reason to be able to write yourself off from being accountable.
Hmm.
And that's, really destroying honest connections, right? And and
I
it's
also
holding a lot of growth back. But I do appreciate that, you're here,
Hmm.
right? And you are processing and and growing, you know.
Hmm.
I'm 54 years old, and I've been dealing with trauma pretty much my whole life.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that I've experienced relationships where domestic violence was, involved. I can't say that.
Yeah.
Well,
However,
like
I
I said in
can.
the beginning, it's not just a uh, interpersonal relationship, right? It could be, your coworkers or a family member.
Yeah.
Those are all relationships
Yeah.
that
Well,
impact.
in all my relationships, I'm dealing um I'm dealing off of my trauma, and I'm in therapy for that. So,
Hmm.
I have to learn how to not react, you know, um, through my trauma. That's what I have to learn how to.
I want to take a second to just acknowledge, Carmen, that you are very brave for being open and honest about
Yes.
that you are the problem, because
Hmm.
that's a level of accountability that most people don't have.
Hmm.
Most we
You know,
haven't even really
exactly.
defined toxic relationships yet in this episode. Maybe we should take a pause and do that. But most people in a toxic space, they blame someone, they blame the other person.
Yeah.
um, in almost every
Right.
situation, there's two parties involved, and everyone has some sort of accountability. So I just want to acknowledge you being so brave to say I might be the problem, because we don't always want to do that, right? We
Right.
rather,
Right.
it's easier to be the victim than it is to be
Right.
the problem.
I
So
appreciate.
thank you for that.
I'm past 50, so being a victim is not even an option.
So I do have a definition here, and this is coming from verywellmind.com. For a toxic relationship is one that makes you feel unsupported, misunderstood, demeaned, or attacked. A relationship is toxic when your well-being is threatened in some way, emotionally, psychologically, and even physically. And that's the definition that I have. It's a lot more
That's
to it, but
broad.
that's a,
That's very
a shorter
broad.
version of it. Um,
The emotional part and the psychological part, I can say yes. Yes,
mhm,
and that's how I respond off of those, off of those. And
Right.
for me, yes. And for me, I have, if you want to call, if that's the definition of a toxic relationship, then yes, I've definitely been in those.
mhm.
Um, However, I still don't know what part my trauma played into the toxicity, if you understand what I mean by
Can you
But
You
be
know,
in a toxic relationship but not be actually in a relationship with someone?
yeah.
Like, for example, Carmen, you said when you a lot of your toxic relationship tendencies may have been something that you've seen when you were younger. You know what I'm saying?
That
Like,
you
for example,
adopted
me, I'm
those.
the same way. Like, I've never actually not been in a toxic relationship. I feel like I've been in a toxic relationship every time I'm with somebody because of, like you said, a lot of things that I've done. A
yes.
lot of things that I learned as a child, watching my mom and dad go through their situations and their struggles and arguments and fighting and arguments and all of that. Kind of, I've learned so much from that lifestyle that growing up, I ended up having that same type of relationships with the people that I've been with.
It's normal though. I
You
mean,
know,
we're all a product of our environment.
See, every relationship and connection has a potential to be toxic, right? At any given moment. And, you know, our relationship with our children, right? We know raising children, there's always been, some point in time where they're teenagers and they want to rebel, right?
hmm.
And there's always some moment, right? And we're human beings. We make mistakes. We go to dark places. We struggle, right?
Hmm.
And not everybody's going to be on the same timing, the same vibe. And
Can we have toxic
that's
relationships with our
okay.
children?
But that's okay.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You can.
Yep.
If you want to be
Yeah.
honest,
Because of the
yes.
because of the cycle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's that cycle. It goes, from one generation to another generation.
Mhm.
And that's where the toxicity comes from. You know
What
what I
a,
Yep.
mean?
what about when a two parents are not together and they're weaponizing that parenthood and
Yep,
they're like,
that's
Yeah.
your
true.
daddy ain't
Yeah.
shit,
That's
or your mom's
toxicity.
on drugs, or your
Yes.
mom's a hoe, or your
True.
dad is, you know what I'm
Yes.
saying,
Exactly.
whatever.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's
That's
facts.
And
that's
kids,
oh my gosh.
children, as they grow and mature, they are constantly testing their boundaries,
Hmm.
you know, on
We all do.
their
We all
parents.
do as
Yeah.
Yeah.
humans. We all push, until we can't seem to push no more.
And
Right.
as
However,
it's our
as far as
responsibility, you know.
Allison, what was you trying to say?
Oh, I mean, no, I was just making the point that that's almost two forms of toxicity, right?
Mhm.
As a
Mhm.
social worker, when I first moved to Washington and went into social services, I worked for CPS, and on the reunification side of things. So once a kid was already removed,
Yeah.
but you know how many calls come into CPS from a parent just making up some shit?
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, my kid came home from their dad's and they have a bruise. Yeah, your kid is 6 and plays soccer. Like, and
Right.
it's weaponizing whatever resources that they have available against the other parent. So that's a toxic relationship between those parents. But you're also,
It's a
if you're
power
putting into
struggle.
a kid's a kid's head that their mom does this or their dad does this,
Mhm.
I don't care how terrible the other parent actually is. If you're talking about the other parent to your kid, that's a toxic
Manipulating. Yeah,
environment.
it's really
That's whether it's true or not. Honestly, it's a toxic
so.
environment. And so,
Y-
and in some ways, it's kids are gonna figure out who their parents are regardless. But
Mhm.
putting it
Mhm.
into their head, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's it's extremely
I-
toxic, and those are the lessons that they will grow up and they will model down the road if they don't learn how to unlearn those bad habits that they learn from their very
Sadly,
own
Mark,
parents.
too many parents actually, you know, get away with all of that, because seriously, there are very few parents in my community that actually raise their children.
Hmm.
Actually have conversations with them and you know really connect with their children. And it surprises me. And the other parents are like, hey, my kid's fed, they're provided for, we're good. And two, more and more, I see in addicts where the parent
Hmm.
influences the child,
Yeah.
you know, and they feed off each other on addiction. And it's so sad. It's so, so sad because as parents, we have to we have to show these kids how to live life, right?
Hmm.
It's not about education, it's not about work and paying bills. We have to show them what to appreciate out of life, to have
I'm
that
gonna
thirst.
I'm I'm gonna have to disagree with you, agree to disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Because for me, for my family, okay, it is about the education.
Hmm.
Yeah.
For one, I didn't receive the education. I graduated high school, but it wasn't until I was 53 years old that I actually graduated from college. But my daughter, who is now 34,
Hmm.
she graduated college about 11, 12 years ago, and she has, what she needs to be for her to be sustainable,
Hmm.
you
Yes.
know.
No, I
So,
think you misunderstood me.
Yeah.
It is about education, but that's, as a parent, you have to try to nurture their ambition and their wanting to, have a thirst for life,
Hmm.
for knowledge, for the experiences. You want them to be strong enough to be confident enough to chase after those things.
Hmm.
You
and
know,
children only do what do it's kind of like taking a horse to water and making him drink it.
right?
You can only
Exactly.
do so much. Now I can honestly say that in my younger years, I was addicted to crack cocaine.
Hmm.
So I was doing the best that I could possibly do to raise my children. Now, if you want to talk about toxicity,
Hmm.
Right.
okay, that's definitely raising children and you're an addict. That's definitely toxicity.
Yeah.
Dealing with people who do
Oh, oh no.
She froze up.
But
Can
yeah.
you guys hear?
I can hear.
Oh.
Oh, we can't hear on our end.
Carmen, we can't hear
do.
you. Okay, there
Okay.
you go.
I'm
No,
sorry.
you just
Okay, go
cut
ahead.
out.
We can hear you
It's
now. We can
okay.
hear you now. You came back. You
Okay.
froze for a second.
Sorry about that. But yeah, there's a lot of toxicity in addiction, and families, that deal with people that are addictions. That's toxicity. Those are toxic relationships. Anytime you deal with an addict, that's a toxic relationship.
Exactly.
And I'll say about maybe 90, 92, 93%, everybody knows at least somebody in their family is an addict.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely, it's, it might not be in you, but it's around you. Or it
Right.
might be in you or and not around you. So either way you gonna get it. And it's toxic.
And that's
So you
for
add
our
that
youth
to,
in our future. There's, that they're exposed.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's everywhere.
It
Toxic
is.
relationships everywhere. They're all over the TV, all
yeah,
over YouTube, all over the
it's
streets, the
Yeah.
schools that they go to. I mean, it's
It's
everywhere.
you
right there.
It's everywhere
toxicity
you
is
go.
basically living life right now. Toxicity is basically living life.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because even though you might come in contact with somebody, you don't know what they got going on
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
until you
How do you?
get to that point where you're like the vibe, you start feeling the vibes and well, I'm sophisticated and loud, so
But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So how
but
how do we how do we
the strength is, how do we transform that toxic energy into something that's going to help, something
beneficial?
exactly. How do we transform it into a strength?
Well,
Q, what you
I
got
think
to say?
Go ahead,
I
Q.
think Allison touched on something earlier that I think we can all relate to and look at. She talked about, kind of what's being taught in schools. The fact that there's certain parts, the fact that mental health is not as big as a discussion. You talked
Mhm.
about learning how to write a check and different things. And
Mhm.
if I look at, where I'm from and just kind of my history and how, my family experiences, a lot of those things coming from the inner city or coming from the East Coast, they're not always talked about.
Right.
The expectation is, you deal with it and move on, and then you figure it out. But I think that we're moving into a day and age and a generation where that just doesn't work anymore. And so these life skills that Allison talked about that we need to start teaching, we have to get everybody on board. And I think that there's some people that are on board. They see it as important for kids and young adults to learn. And then there's some people that still live with that old school mindset of they'll figure it out as they become adults. And that's what we're struggling with right now. And that's why we have some adults that are still figuring out their life while they have children. There's an old phrase, or
Yeah.
probably not an old phrase, but there's something that I hear all the time. There's still children having children, because they
Absolutely.
haven't figured out, how to operate. And we talking about toxicity, there's different types of trauma, there's different types of trauma that we've all dealt with growing up
Yes.
as children. And there's some trauma that's maybe we can call it lightweight trauma, that you've seen some things happen and you're able to move past it and it doesn't affect you as an adult. But then there's some trauma that you've dealt with or you've seen that has affected the way that you think and has affected your relationships and how you operate as an adult. And a lot of us, they are not being taught those life skills, how to deal with that. If we
But
were
to
taught those life
internalize and
skills,
what to,
correct.
like,
If we were taught those life skills, Allison, pertaining to your point, if these are things that are being taught, now we're talking about building leaders. We're talking about building people that can think for themselves.
Mhm.
Um,
Self-sufficiency.
that, exactly, exactly. And so we live in a society where that just isn't. That's not the priority. It's not.
Exactly.
And so
and it's not
it's
Mhm.
worth anything, right?
correct.
Okay, so
Mhm.
I want to talk about two things that just came to my mind. Number
Sure.
one, this weirds me out. I'm sure that this is every generation, right? There's a, but I don't know why I feel like it's so common now, and it's probably social media and just access to each other, right? Social media just gives us access to each other in a way
Mhm.
that never existed, before 20 years ago, really.
Mhm.
in the 50s and the 60s and prior to that, the man worked and the woman stayed home with the kids. So she was reliant on her husband to work, right? More for the most part. Not that women didn't work, but most of the time, the man made the money and the women relied on that, right? So women took all kinds of abuse, and those relationships were all kind of unhealthy because women didn't have any skills other than parenting and
Providing the
being
home.
homemakers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's a lot. It's a
So
lot.
nowadays, but nowadays we're not there anymore. Women are in the workforce more than ever. Women are supervisors and managers and CEOs, whatever. But at 45 years old and being single, right? And dating, I hear from men all the time how women just want to be taken care of. And I'm like, bitch, get a job. You know what I'm saying? Because what will happen is that you will have a toxic man who will prey on those girls, those young women. I shouldn't call them girls because many of them are full-grown women.
Single parent,
And
yes.
women will stay in those relationships
More vulnerable.
because they are taken care of financially. And so
But
they might be
those are the
beautiful, they
ones
might
that
be somebody's eye candy, somebody's whatever, but behind the scenes, because they're relying on those men financially, they allow the toxicity to exist. That was one thought I have, and I don't ever understand that because I'm like, nah, like
That could also
that's
potentially be a trauma.
Okay.
oh for
You
sure,
yes,
know, that could be
for
a
sure.
trauma that somebody, because you know we talk about what have you seen, what have you been through, what have you dealt with as a young person, as a young kid coming up.
Yeah.
And sometimes those traumas, they just correlate and they transition themselves right into your adult life. And so
100%.
that could potentially be a trauma that, you know, whoever, you know, that man or woman could be dealing with. Maybe that's something that they saw. And
and you know
we're
what?
just
I agree with you,
Mhm.
Q. I definitely will agree with you because it's like for me, like everything I saw and everything I everything I saw and everything I heard and everything that was done, you know, it makes me like react to people differently as if I wouldn't, you know what I'm saying, as if I didn't have that trauma. So I definitely do agree with you on that. And what you were saying, I'm sorry, what's your name, love?
Allison.
Allison. I have short memory lapses. But what you were saying as far as I'm sorry, you guys. I had a brain freeze, and I forgot what I was talking about. So go ahead, carry on.
No, you're good. The other thing that I was gonna say is that what we don't talk about enough is toxic workspaces.
Boom.
Um,
That's what I
and
said.
Yeah.
and David,
Can I?
David will tell you I am very pro union, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and the reality is that unions exist to prevent toxic workspaces. You know what I'm saying? Like I just quit my job working at the state of Washington, which is also where David works. Um, and we worked in very similar field, but
Yeah.
we worked under the same administration. But my workspace was so toxic that I was physically getting ill because of it. And my union was doing the best they could, but sometimes you can only fight so hard. But the reality is unions exist to stop bad managers from treating people like shit. And
I was,
they're not
I
perfect,
was,
but that's why
yeah.
unions exist, and that's why every space should be unionized, because that's the
Okay.
way that you avoid that toxicity in the workspace. Because people will become supervisors and management, and they will abuse the shit out of the people that work for them, and
See,
we need to pay our bills, so we pay.
individual
You know,
unions are different. They're like a community. You know, I've seen unions that are just crap, that literally steal from all of their members, 401ks or pensions or whatever. But it's like a community. You have to make it a good, strong, functional union. So
I was
and
sexually
there's
assaulted by.
several different types of unions too.
What were you saying, Carmen?
I was sexually assaulted on a job that had a union,
Hmm.
and yeah, And that's another thing as far as mental health goes, because I do have PTSD, that flared up my mental health. And so, as soon as I moved down here, first I was discriminated against, which was toxic because that was another workplace environment that, didn't like blacks.
Right.
Then I went to DES. I went to DESC. I got sexually assaulted, and that brought back my PTSD, my bipolar, it just, and I went into therapy after.
Mhm.
Then I worked at, huh?
No,
No, go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna be right back.
Then I worked at one of the dispensaries, and everybody there was as old as my children. So I did the best that I could, but I just wasn't having, you talking to me any kind of way you feel like you
Right.
want to. I have, a 34-year-old and a 29-year-old, okay? So all three of those jobs, were toxic. And at some point, the union can only do so much for you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because even though the union's supposed to fight for you, I believe, in my opinion, they also fight against you. So,
But
the toxicity and
too,
all that.
career and finding purpose for what you do, because a lot of people are stuck in circumstance, right? What
Mhm.
they think is available to them, right? And a lot of people too also only have those choices. And women, especially, we have a lot of underlying um, hardships in life, right? Whether it be sexual, um, pressure, you know, um, unsaid expectations, right? Like, oh, you want some overtime? Oh, this and that and the other. There's always situations like that being manipulated, being made to feel that, oh, we don't deserve to be treated equally or respectfully, right? Unless we work harder or unless we do allow the extra touching or right. And
See,
then
I'm kind of touchy with the situation. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I don't know where you're going with this. As far as toxicity goes, it doesn't matter where you're at or who you work for. You know
exactly.
what I mean? Sexual assault is a no-no. You know
Right.
what I mean?
No, I
And
agree.
that the fact that, like I said, I don't know where you were going with this, but I instantly, because of my trauma, I instantly think that you're blaming the victim.
No, 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 no,
Okay.
no,
So
never.
I'm just gonna say that's where my toxicity is. Okay. So I'm just gonna, let you say what you're gonna say, and
So I would
yeah.
say that as women, these are things that we deal with most of the time privately,
But it
right?
doesn't make it okay.
No, no, never. But that's what I'm saying is I think women should be acknowledged for their inner struggles that we do have to deal with. Being strapped with the responsibility, most women, when it comes to single parenting, we are the majority, right? And nobody appropriately acknowledges the sacrifices that they have to do to accomplish what they accomplish. You know, they do everything. And I don't know. I think the
Why do we need to why do we need to be acknowledged for things that we're supposed to do anyway?
because a long time ago, men thought it was okay to burden us with that while disassociating from their part in the situation, right? And in all other cultures too, it's more accepted that men are um, unfaithful. But hey, women, we have to. It's it's a we're going down a rabbit hole that I'm not really comfortable with.
No, I just want to reel it back a little bit because I think you know, toxic relationships, yes, they come in all different shapes, sizes, formats, work, school. You could be at the park
Grocery
and
store.
get into a toxic relationship with someone at the park. I mean, it is what it is, but what are the signs? Like, what are the signs?
No, no.
What are the signs that it's a toxic relationship? Do we know what the signs are?
Can I answer on this one?
Sure.
Please
So,
do.
my experience dealing with toxic relationships were really in my earlier years. I'm 42, and when I was younger, especially trying to figure myself out, figure my life out, figure out my direction, where I wanted to go, and who I was as a person. You're susceptible and you're open to different relationships. I had way more friends when I was younger than I do now. My circle's a lot smaller, but when I had more friends, I had more room, and there was more ways and people I was dealing with that were toxic. And so as I started to elevate my life and my thinking, and I started to pursue dreams and goals, I started to realize that the most toxic people around me were the ones that were holding me down.
Hmm.
And so those are some of the signs. It's like as you continue to elevate yourself and you continue to move forward in life, the toxic people are always going to expose themselves. It's going to be very easily to identify who they
Exactly.
are. And as Allison and Carmen talked about, those life skills, developing the leadership qualities and confidence to be able to say, look, you can't ride this wave anymore. So we can't deal with each other.
Exactly.
I don't wish any ill feelings towards you, but I got to move on, and I got to move on without you.
Got to
And so
go.
now in my
Yep.
early 40s, I'm married, have kids. I don't have not one toxic relationship in my life. And it just took some time to kind of get to a point of as a man, as or man or woman, having the confidence and the skills to be able to say no,
We have
get
boundaries.
people away from you, and then
Absolutely.
realize who they are, and then continue to move forward. So, but it's
Tox-
general, but I think
Toxicity is avoidable.
correct, and I think there is some generational ties to that too. That I think we can do right now as we're having this conversation, where we're understanding, and we're starting to come to a realization that we can stop it, and we can stop it with our kids. Those are the next generation of leaders and people that are
We
going
can
to take
stop it
this over.
today. Yeah.
Circle talk in the next 40, 50 years it might be David, it might be your daughter. She might take over circle talk. And so if we cut those generational ties by teaching our kids the life skills that Allison talked about, being able to recognize and identify the toxicity in your life and get rid of it, that's going to help you
The
elevate.
red flags.
That's how we stop it. Because we live in a country right now that breeds off of toxicity. So if we do our part within our own households,
Yeah.
we're going to start sending people out into the world that are going to be able to withstand that, identify, and continue to elevate and move forward.
It's interesting you talked about you being the age you are right now and feeling the way that you feel. I just had this situation happen to me recently where I was at the bar that I go to every weekend. I don't really even drink. It's just more like cheers, right? Like everybody just knows everybody. And there was two guys that were there together. They were clearly friends. And one of them starts like popping at me, and we exchanged social medias. And I immediately that night saw he had a girlfriend, he has a kid. Like, it's very clear that he's in a relationship, right? Whether he's married or not, I don't know. But
Yeah.
like, he was like, my queen, this, my, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, bruh, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to holler at somebody when you clearly got a whole life at home? This man is 41 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is the issue? And I think that the lessons that you've obviously learned, you know what I'm saying, through however you learned it, Kaim, it's amazing to me how underdeveloped some adults are. And it's not just men, it's women as well. But it's just, this is my experience.
Yes.
And then this weekend I saw his homeboy, the one he was with. And he was by himself at a show, or he was with someone else. But and we started talking about it. And I was like, what's wrong with your boy? Like, he's too old. Like, if he's in a relationship, he should be in his relationship. If he's not, like, if he's unhappy, he should not be with her. But to like get at me, but also so blatantly be disrespectful to his woman, that's weird. Like, we're too old for that. And his boy was like, I tell him that. Like, I tell him it's not cool. Don't do, you shouldn't behave like that. And first of all, the fact that he's 41 years old still acts like that. And I see that often. Often I see that behavior is weird. It's not weird. It's sad to me. But then to his boy, I challenged him. Stop hanging out with him. Stop going out with him. Stop being around him like you're his wingman, even though that's what you're not, you're not intentionally doing that, but you're participating in his bad behavior. And that's, you have to be responsible for your own behavior. And if you don't agree with what your boy is doing, then don't be around your boy, because that's not
Okay,
cute.
can
And
I bring up
it's
the
not a
race?
healthy behavior. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And he was like, he actually
It's
texted
like
me the next day and was like, you're right.
Yeah.
No, I am.
Okay.
it's
Um,
it's it's like the conspiracy theory. My son, I don't talk about this too often, but my son, he was in the process of committing a crime when his best friend decided to take the crime out of his hand and commit a homicide.
Hmm.
And even though my son didn't shoot, didn't know what was going on, he
he
was
so
there.
yeah.
And they gave him conspiracy, and they gave him just as much time as
And
they did the
more.
person that pulled the trigger. So I say that to say,
There's very little justice in our judicial system.
people, the people that you associate yourself with, you have to be, like real, like, because for me, everybody's suspect.
Right.
And you just have to be, you can eliminate toxicity from your life if that's what you choose to do.
Well,
But
I do
but I
want to
also
address,
I
the
also want to
situation.
say um, that a lot of people don't know that there's help out there for them. You know, it just depends on where you look, who you talk to, and what you really want to do. If you can, you'll never be free of your trauma ever. So the best thing that you have to do is learn how to live with it. And it took me about 25 to 30 years worth of therapy to learn how to not live how I wanted to say it. It took me 25 to 30 years worth of therapy to, not live in that trauma, but to be
Right.
able to live, so
To thrive and grow past it. Yeah.
And everybody's got their own journey and path, and it's on your timeline.
Exactly.
What I'm talking about with my own personal experience, it's still it's a trial and tribulation. It's still learning, still growing, even at 42. Not to say that I won't have a toxic relationship when I'm 50, because you just don't never know what situation you're gonna be put in.
No, yes.
But I'm definitely confident enough in myself, and I understand. And this is what I'm when I'm coaching and I'm talking to young kids or to young adults. I always use basketball related things, basketball related topics, and I try to interject life lessons into that. We talk about hard work and discipline and things that you're going to need to be successful outside of the basketball court, and how it does reflect in your life and the decisions that you make. So trying to make sure that these young men and women are confident enough to, when basketball ends, it's like you're going to be okay with it, but you have a backup plan. And whatever your backup plan is, whatever you decide to do, like, you still have a civic duty to be responsible and hold yourself accountable, but also hold other people you're dealing with accountable. Um, because again, these are the next leaders. These are the next people that are
Right.
going to take over.
Accountability.
You know?
Chime in now.
Go ahead, sis.
So speaking about other
sec.
people and other situations and how offensive they may be, that way of thinking, rumors or gossip, really isn't positive, right? It's not sustaining your life energy in any way. It's a waste of energy and time because you're not going to change the situation. It's only perpetuating the negativity, right? And the judgmental thinking. Um, and I think that's important to teach our youth too, is how to rationalize the best ways to sustain their life energy, you know, um, and really be able to thrive that
Mhm.
way.
Another thing too that is very, very important to me. When I've had a lot of experience dealing with, especially specifically coaching high school boys and girls, and being in a position to see um, just how much trauma is starting to kind of seep into their life and their thinking and their understanding, and just getting them to understand that whatever circumstance you're in doesn't have to be your circumstance. It doesn't have to. You don't have to carry that weight
Right.
and,
You
and
do have the
transition
power.
that into your life. You can choose a different route, and you can cut those ties. And so trying to get young people to think in that space, um, I think it's everybody's job, because if the teacher's saying it, they might not listen, but if the coach is saying it, they might listen. But if the
Mm.
counselor is saying it, if your after school babysitter saying it, your parents are saying it, you're hearing it everywhere you go. The more that you say it, the more that we preach this and we try to get our young people to understand, the more it's going to be something that they start to think about, because they're hearing it from every corner of their life.
Right.
There's got to be more and more people that are saying these things and giving these kids
To
and, and,
actually
and
get
these
to
young
read
people
them.
the space, yeah, to
I think
understand that help, and,
I
and
think
there's a
that
different light for you.
I think the same applies to adults. I think that we should do more with the youth. It should be part of the curriculum. It should be the discussions we have at home. But to have them at home, you have to have an understanding of what that looks like, right? If you're living in a toxic relationship,
There you
then
go.
you can't teach your kid
Don't,
about it, right?
don't,
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that it needs to
Well, you
come at
can
the
teach them, but you're not teaching them the right way to
Yeah.
to
But
do.
that's what I'm saying.
Regardless,
If you can't
yeah,
teach your kid because you're living it, then that's problematic. But if their teachers are, or their counselors are, their coaches are, if they go to church, if their pastors are, whatever, you know what I'm saying? If they're getting that
Yeah.
positive reinforcement about how to identify and deal with those kinds of relationships, that's important. But I don't think it's just for kids. I think that like I was
Everybody,
talking
yeah.
about the adults that are still in those bad have those bad
Mm-hmm.
traits and don't want to be held accountable. again, I just go back to my own personal life and being out here trying to date these men, like I said, like the dude that I met, constantly. You meet guys all the time. And I'm not afraid to set boundaries. Like if you talk to me crazy, we're not going to talk anymore. Like it's just not going to happen.
Right.
And I find it funny because now that I've been a comedian for a couple of years, they turn to, oh, that was just a joke. You're a comedian, you can't take a joke. Nah, motherfucker, that wasn't a joke. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
what you said was some bullshit, and I'm calling it out. And I wish that as adults we did that more to each other. Men to women, women to men, whatever, women to women, whatever. I wish we were unafraid. And David knows I'm unafraid. But most people are they don't call out what things are, and then they don't set boundaries around it. So if a guy doesn't like the fact that I set a boundary, he'll just stop talking to me and find a new bitch at will. You know what I'm saying?
For TV though,
Breach the
they get
boundary.
away with as much as they do because most of it is hidden or behind closed doors.
No, it's not. I'm not
every
talking
time you
about
turn the
that,
TV on social media, it's glorified wherever you look.
Oh, for sure.
It's glorified
And
all over the
here's the
place.
difference,
All
though.
over the place.
Everybody on this screen grew up with rap music, and rap music is demeaning towards women, and the things that most of these rappers said about women were horrible,
okay.
and most of them talked about dealing dope. And I'm not sure because I don't know y'all, but I'm
With
guessing
DMX.
honey, y'all deal dope. You know what I'm saying? Because at some point we grew up, but and it's not behind closed doors.
That's the
What?
thing right there. What you just said is like
We
at some point we grow up and we're able to decipher, like, you know what, that's entertainment. This is real life. I gotta make better decisions. So my question is
How many lives were lost, glorifying that culture, right? Children went into I'm gonna be in the gang. I'm gonna be a thug and that and the other. And I mean, that's gotta be a lot of lives wasted because that's all they hope for. That's all they hope for.
That's not the point that I'm trying to make, though. The point that I'm trying to make is that people from our generation, there's a lot of people in our generation who did grow up. I still know 45-year-old dope dealers for sure. They're still out there, right?
Yep.
But
They're
if
still
we
there.
hold people accountable, like I don't want to hear about how you're upset that your mama is still doing
It's their
dope when
responsibility.
you sell dope to someone else's mama. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not afraid to call that shit out anymore. So it's like
it
you
definitely
have to
is
grow up.
accountability. Definitely.
It comes down to accountability. But
Yes.
when it goes back to just toxic relationships, and I'm talking like mostly intimate relationships, but also friendships, we have to be able to hold other people accountable and set those boundaries. Just like I told that dude, if you don't like the way he does, like if you know he's not treating his woman well and he's trying to play these other chicks, don't hang out with him. That's
the
me
thing.
willing to
Calling
stand.
them out
Can you? Oh my gosh.
can be an attack, right?
No, it's not. That's not an attack.
If it's coming from a place of love, then
No, it doesn't
do it
have to
that
be a
way.
place of love, honey. If you're fucking up, stop fucking up. You're a grown ass man. I don't have to love somebody to be like, what you're doing is toxic. What you're doing is allowing your homeboy to cheat on his girl. And
so you're saying it's okay. You're basically saying that, him running around to all these clubs, knowing that he has a girl and a kid at home,
but
and
the thing
still
is,
riding
I told
with
the
it.
dude too.
Yeah.
When I saw
you get to a point where
I told the dude.
You can only hold somebody accountable if they want to be held accountable. Now that situation right there, what is his homeboy gonna do?
But at the same time, I'm not going to be coming out of myself and doing bad and disrespecting the grown people, and being almighty and go, hey, this is what you should do. This is how you should do it,
She's basically, saying, like, for example, if we were at a club and, I have a girl at the house and, or you don't even know that I got to go out of the house.
Right.
I'm there with
What?
my,
Yeah.
my boy, and you figure out by just hearsay that, I'm with somebody already, but I was hollering at you a few minutes ago. She's just kind of pinpointing on that and saying that, hey, this is
The
something you need to check
bromance.
that.
The
Check that dude.
bromance.
If that's
Right.
the type of people
Culture.
you're gonna be around, then
No, there's two parts here. Number one, I told dude himself, what you're
yeah,
doing isn't cool. You gave
right,
me your social media where you clearly have a girl. Stop talking to me.
gotcha,
Don't. And I stopped talking to him. So
right,
I
right,
let
right,
him know too. But then when I saw his homeboy and
yeah,
I talked to him about it and he said, yeah, that's not cool. That's when I questioned him and said, well, then why do you still enable that behavior?
right,
Because
right.
as long as bro has a wingman, he's going to keep that
He's gonna
behavior
keep
up.
doing it,
He's not gonna go out on his own and do it. You know what
right,
I'm saying? He has a group of homies that will protect him in his mind and that are not telling his girl what he's doing and that are not telling these other bitches, oh, homeboy has a girl. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
my thing is you do speak up, you do set boundaries. And my experience has been when you set those boundaries with people, that's when they were like, oh, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
It's
Because they
interesting.
don't want to be accountable for their behavior.
Like Allison, I'm so glad
Right.
that you brought this part up because this takes me back. And Kai remembers these days when we used to do music, and I used to run with my boy Everard and Kai and Shamari Lewis, and we used to do all these shows. And after the shows, we had all these ladies that wanted to hang out with us after the shows, but we all had women at the house.
Right.
And if it wasn't for this clique of people that I was running with, I would have probably never really been in that lifestyle. But because my boys was doing it, I decided to do it as well. If they were never there, and once they got to a place, once Everard decided he was going to get married, and he said he was going to be with his woman and just his woman, we was like, no, you can't break up the circle. But he was making the right choices for himself and his life, and he was growing up, instead of doing the toxic things that we were doing as 20-year-olds running in the streets. He said, I'm going to move on and leave this toxicity behind and get married and have a family. And, he's not married anymore, but,
It's true.
he's,
It definitely gets to a point where you say, when is enough enough?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you're a
Because
child,
when I,
you can't choose. I'm sorry, Carmen, I didn't mean to cut you off.
go ahead, baby.
I was just saying, when you're a child, you can't choose. Sometimes you can't choose the toxic relationship that you're in or you're around. But when you become an adult, at that point, like it's a decision now. You have a decision. You have you understand and you can see people that are in your corner that are not in your corner. You have to make the decision. Like, I'm either going to hold on to this or I'm going to let it go. And if you continue to hold on to it, then you're making a
Then
choice.
you have to, yes, then you have to be responsible for the consequences that come along with that choice.
Mhm.
So I got a question for everybody. There's about 15 minutes. I got to go pick up my son in a little bit. But I want to ask this question because to me, and this is just me talking about my life and the things that I've gone through. All of you guys have your stories, but for me, I grew up into toxicity. My dad was an abusive father and all this stuff. You guys know the story about my upbringing. How can we as parents teach our children about this toxicity and help them change the narrative? What are some of the things that you can do as an individual, a mother or father? What are some of the tips that you guys use to teach your children about toxicity and how to stay away from it? I mean, anybody can go first, whoever wants to go first.
I never got that chance to do that because, like I said, raising my children, I was in addiction. But I can speak right now.
Yep.
What I would tell my children is to hold yourself accountable first.
Check yourself before somebody else
Check yourself and hold yourself accountable.
Okay.
Once you do that, then you shouldn't be having to hold yourself accountable too often.
Absolutely.
because once you hold yourself accountable,
present.
I think therapy is helpful, and I think therapy is
yes,
necessary. Um,
For my
I think that
children,
Please,
I
Allison.
think
oh, sorry.
I think that therapy is really important. I also think that being willing to set those boundaries. Sometimes we have to cut off our parents.
yes,
Sometimes we have to
yes.
cut off our kids.
Love them
Sometimes
from a distance.
sometimes we have to cut off the people that we thought that we would never cut off. Um, I've never said this really publicly before, but one of the big reasons that I moved from California 10 years ago was because there were people in my life that I loved very much that constantly rely on me for everything. And I was their emotional support human. But the thing is I'm a giver and a fixer. So I could do for them
But
things that
you
they could
weren't.
never do for me. And I had to literally move out of the area. So I wasn't the first person they called for everything because those behaviors were not toxic. I mean, those behaviors are incredibly toxic and I needed to separate myself. And I still wanted that person in my life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I still wanted relationships with those people.
Yeah.
But I had to be willing to completely change my life to be able to create space. Because when I asked for space or when I asked for that person to be accountable, then I was a bad person. Because gaslighting and manipulation and all of that is part of a toxic relationship, whether it's friendship or otherwise.
Definitely narcissistic. Yeah.
So, well, I don't diagnose people as narcissistic the way that everyone does because it's overly used and under identified
The
in reality.
tendencies.
But
It's the tendencies.
you have to be able to set those boundaries, and sometimes they're really fucking hard because they're the people that you love the most.
Absolutely.
So I think accountability, which is what Carmen said, therapy is, everyone should be in therapy. Therapy should be free. You know what I'm saying? Like we should be paying, our government should be giving
Be part of our insurance package.
dollars to people to become therapists.
Exactly.
And then people should be able to get in therapy for free. Everybody. Therapy, and then being able to understand and hold people to boundaries. Because like I said before, right now we're in a space where, oh, somebody sets a boundary. Oh, I'll just stop talking to you and I'll find someone who lets me breach that boundary. But if we're all holding each other accountable, then we're forced to deal with, oh, maybe it is me. Maybe I do got to fix myself.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So that's my thoughts on that.
What about you? Keith?
I would have to say, so when it comes to my kids, just my family in general, I talk about be a leader, not a follower, and I try to break that down, and so that they get a clear understanding of what that means, because you have to be confident, okay enough to tell somebody no, I can't be your friend. We can't be involved. I'm moving this way. You need to go that way. And a lot of times kids and young adults, they struggle with being able to tell somebody no because they feel like they have to be everybody's friend. And so I've been teaching that to my kids ever since they were young. Stand up for yourself. It's okay to tell somebody no. As you become a young adult, it's even okay to tell me, you know what, Dad, like I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to go this direction. And I got to respect that.
Absolutely.
Now, in terms of just kind of the toxic relationship space and just, I'm dealing with young adults and talking to young fathers, you have to hold yourself accountable. Like you have to get to a point where you care enough about people that you're willing to be 100% honest. You're willing to be 100% honest with yourself and even 100% honest with how you're treating somebody or how they're treating you. And when you care enough about people, I think that all of these different labels that people try to throw out, narcissistic, all this stuff goes out the window. Because if I care about you enough and I'm 100% honest, then we can then either we're gonna move past it and I'm gonna identify that I'm the problem and I'm gonna fix it, or it's gonna be an identification that you're the issue and then I'm gonna move my way and you move your way. But Alex, you're right. If we all hold each other to the same standard, then people just can't tiptoe around and bounce back and forth. They're gonna have to deal with the issues on their own. But I don't think we're ever gonna get to that space, But we can do it within our own circles, though.
Absolutely.
We can do it within our own circles, and as time goes on, maybe we'll be able to make a dent in it. you know, if we're dealing with our own circles. But you know, it's something that we're just going to continue to have to work on.
Yeah.
But prioritizing intent and communicating about what is important about your expectations of them, and you know, identifying, hey, what are your expectations of me, you know, um and
I don't
really
have expectations of people.
Yeah, I just don't. Yep.
I don't have expectations of people because the one thing that I'm definitely sure of is people will disappoint you every single time.
Yeah.
I
right,
don't have
but
expectations of people.
communicating about it
Mhm.
is important, because
And
you
if I
know
have
people
to,
do have expectations, wants,
Mhm.
and needs, because you know, I identifying and realizing that everybody uses each other. And I
I
know
think
it
sometimes
sounds
the
bad, but
expectations,
it's true. You know,
sometimes the expectations though, that could be a formula for the toxicity to come in too. I think, you know,
that is
I think
exactly,
but and that's
I'm
especially
what
not
when
I'm saying.
saying
you
that
are.
I'm
It's
not
just,
saying I'm 100% right, and trust me, I'm not perfect, but I believe that that's a part of the formula. You know,
But
I think if somebody
communicating
shows
about
me
it.
who they are, you know, then I'm gonna take it for face value. You know,
Believe them. Exactly.
yeah.
Believe
See,
it.
I'm a little bit nicer when it comes to that. I'm gonna give you a couple chances. I'm gonna be like, hey,
No.
this
You do? You give
these
a
are
couple
things that I
chances?
see. What?
Listen, when
You
you
give a
turn
couple chances?
Too many usually.
Okay.
when
Yeah,
you
Okay.
when you
Because
reach
I want to
50,
believe that people I want to believe that people sometimes are ignorant to some of this stuff, right? So I
Yeah.
want to believe that, hey, you know what? Maybe you've never had someone that held you accountable. Maybe no one's ever stood up to you and said, don't talk to me like that. So I'm gonna give you a couple chances. But if you don't show me that you're actually trying to change, or you're actually willing to learn more, or you're willing to get into therapy, or you're willing to read a book, you know what I'm saying?
maybe they
Then
are on a
that's where the
different path.
problem is.
Yeah.
But I try, I hope that people will make the effort, because we've all changed ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we that didn't happen overnight. For Carmen, it might have been later in life. For me, also later in life. You know what I'm saying? Like, but for Kai, he may have been more developed younger. I don't know. So I want
Right.
to try to meet people where they're at, and I want to hope that
exactly,
they're
Mhm.
open
exactly.
to the ideas that I have. But and sometimes that works. Sometimes that does work,
Absolutely.
but
But
not
you
always.
Once
know,
you
be
once
gracious
you
enough.
hit 50, once you hit 50, the day that you hit 50,
I'm trying to
That's way
be
too close for me. I don't want to
46.
talk about it.
and then I'm telling you,
Enjoy this thing.
the day that you hit 50, it becomes fuck it.
Oh, honey,
Age
my fuck it happened
is
a long
I,
time ago.
time
on everything that I love.
is
What
fictitious.
I mean, it instantly, as soon as I turned 50, it instantly, that phrase popped in my head.
Fuck it.
So I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah,
And
I
I
gotta
want
to
to
get
say
ready for
all
it.
of you guys all hit on some amazing points when it comes to, toxicity and how to avoid it, how to maneuver it, how to
Transform it.
steer through it. It's obviously something that we are going to be dealing with for a long, long time. But these conversations are what we need to get to a place where we understand and we know how to steer clear of it in our lives
Process.
moving forward. Um,
Definitely.
I know for me, and I'm just going to say this because I should say it, because I've been going through a situation of toxicity in my own world. And up until recently, I have finally found the gush to change that situation. And Allison, you said something that is absolutely, it hit me like instantly. You don't give one chance, you gave multiple chances to people. You're an extremely nice person, and You
Carmen,
know,
don't be judging me down there.
try to see the good in this particular person, and maybe they haven't seen or been pushed to a place where they could, get the help that is necessary for them, or they could, go and see someone that's going to help them through their issues.
Or it might not be a priority for them.
And for
You
me,
give
I
you give an inch, they gonna take a mile.
I gave them a chance, and then they went back to it. Then I gave them another chance, and they went back to it. And eventually, it got to a place where nothing changed. And as much as I loved this particular individual, and I knew this particular individual was right for me, I needed to step away from it because us as a
Together
couple was
What
toxic.
worked?
Okay, wait. You can't say in the same breath she was
Yeah.
right for you and
Yeah.
that she wasn't.
Yeah.
She wasn't
Yeah.
right
Yes,
for you, David.
yes, you
She
can.
was she was never right for you.
She was not right.
I know
for you.
it feels right.
No.
What
Emotionally,
you
it
just said
felt
was,
right.
as much as I
but
knew, listen to your own words. As much
I
as I
am
knew that this person was right for me, she still couldn't get her shit together, is where you were going. So then she wasn't
yeah.
right for you, Dave.
No, she
And
might
that,
still
and that's
I'm getting,
be.
and that's
that's
not
Yes,
your
she
job.
what
is.
I'm
She
trying to
can't
That's not your
say.
job either. My
That's
job,
not
my job is not to create you or to form you.
Or
right.
fix you.
Absolutely.
Like,
Exactly.
no.
Absolutely.
If you
Like,
got problems, then we don't need to deal with each other because
The
I'm dealing
freedom
with my own
in
issues.
his heart
I can't help you
is
with yours.
what he gets to keep.
I
Right?
I get exactly what you're saying, and I'm saying in my mind, I thought we were right together, but then reality hit me,
There we
and
go.
You ever heard of stinking thinking?
this isn't working. I'm not this person that I'm continuing to walk around as, come home and be uncomfortable and irritated and aggravated and annoyed. And I'm not that person. That's not me. And the reason why this is happening because I continue to live in this environment with this individual that I thought I was going to be with and spend the rest of my life with, when in all actuality, that's not what it was. I had to separate myself from that situation and that person so that we didn't end up killing each other at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just saying, like, all of you guys have valid points that I am so happy that you guys have said. I'm so excited for part 2. I'm gonna have at least a couple of y'all on. I think Kai, you said you were gonna be on part 2.
Yep. Yeah. I'll be there.
Allison, you on part 2? And we're going to talk about domestic violence, when the toxic relationship elevates and goes to a place of abuse.
When toxic relationships actually become physical.
Exactly. So we will touch on that in 2 weeks. Make sure you guys tune in. That is October 23rd for anybody that doesn't know the exact date. It's there. 2 weeks from now, same time, same bad channel. It'll be us. We'll be hanging out. Make sure you guys tune in. I'm really excited for that one as well. We're gonna get some stories. We're gonna actually get some stories.
Can I say the closing statement?
What's the closing statement?
Red flags equal toxicity.
Keep shining bright despite the shade of the world.
Okay.
I like it.
I like that.
We'll roll with that.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We will be back in 2 weeks. Y'all take care.
And y'all take a peek at Sophisticated and Loud. We going on air
7 p.m. tonight, right? 7 p.m. tonight.
Yes.
Okay, Allison. When you guys back
7
on again?
p.m. tonight.
My podcast drops every week, usually. Old Heads, Young Minds on YouTube. We don't do it live, but we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, all the things basically. So you have to listen to that anytime.
Absolutely. And Kai,
we got
you guys got a new podcast. Let's go.
We got the fatherhood check-in. It's gonna be every other Thursday at 8 p.m. So we're gonna be on Ninjas Thursday at 8 p.m. I'll share the link on my Facebook page. So
okay, one more thing before we get out of here. We need the hotline. So we're going to go ahead and find that for you guys real quick and make sure you guys have that information for anyone out there that needs to to get in contact with someone. I have the
do.
number right
While
here.
you're looking that up, I'm gonna do a shout out to also on top of the national domestic violence hotline that you're about to read. I just want everyone to remember that 988 is the number for the suicide prevention hotline. So if you're in a space where you are
That's a
feeling
number, Liz.
overwhelmed, that's a national number now. It's just like 911, but it's for people who feel suicidal or people who are struggling mentally. So don't ever be afraid to call that. Or if you have a friend that you're concerned about, call 988, and you can help get resources for people who are severely, in a bad space.
Absolutely.
And especially if you yourself are considering self-harm, please call that number.
Absolutely.
For
Okay,
sure.
so free. 24/7, you can call this number, National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. I'll make sure I post it in the comments for you guys, for anyone out there that's watched this and needs to talk to somebody and just wants to get some thoughts out and some direction. 1-800-799-7233. All right, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. We out of here. Take care.
All right. Appreciate it.
You as well. See you guys.